2 months ago, Futurist Karen Sand and I did a interview talking about future trends, where we were heading with this whole coronavirus pandemic situation. And Karen had an incredibly great quote in that I did a video blog on that was a big hit.
This is an opportunity, even if you're in a dire circumstance such as you've lost your job or you're afraid that you're going to lose your job and now what am I going to do and am I going to just start throwing darts and doing stuff like that, to take a pause. That was put to me yesterday by Karen Sand, who was recently voted one of the top 50 futurists in the world by Forbes magazine. And a futurist isn't a crystal ball prediction person. In fact, futurists do not make predictions. They look at trends and such. This is the way she put it.
Because right now is a pivot time. It's pause, then pivot. I think that's really important for people.
That's very good. Yeah, pause and then pivot.
Then pivot. Because if you pivot before you pause, you're pivoting and you're going to get screwed. You're going to be acting as if, and that if doesn't exist anymore. It's an emotional inventory. It's a psychological inventory. And it's really looking at, okay, what do I really want to do in the world? Really do in the world? And where am I needed now? Let it all go, what you knew, and open to what's possible.
So Karen, here we are in June now, a little bit better known trajectory. Should we still be pausing, or should we be pivoting, or what?
I think that's a layered question. My overall response still is to pause. And I'll give you an example. I was on a panel for the Elevate organization, which is an organization for women across the country. And I didn't realize at the time, this was last Wednesday, that it was going to be mostly people from New York City, which of course is the hub of where the pandemic really hit us first and hardest. Not first, but second and hardest. And the two of the panelists who are very much involved in Manhattan, I have moved out of Manhattan now years ago, but we're adamant about opening up and getting things going. And I stood and, I sat and I listened and I went, I'm not so sure of that. And I responded that I still felt that we were in pause time and that rushing into opening New York City before we really knew we had a handle on what's going on, and that we were not only ready to bring people back to work, which I don't think we are ready at all for, and I don't think we're going to be ready for quite a while, because with all the changes that companies that are talking about changing, whether it's, sensors for the elevators, separations, no more open offices, that's for sure.
Well, in the state of overall employment and who they're going to keep, how many gig workers they're going to bring in. Yes, all of big unknowns. Yes.
All unknown. But in addition, what they're not paying attention to is where is the emotional state of your employees, those that are on salaried and still working remotely. The desire to come back to work, so-called back to work, is very, very tenuous. People are really frightened. This virus is not under control, and it won't be until probably another year, until we have vaccines that hopefully will work, and other ways of dealing with this. So I still think that there's a major issue that hasn't been taken into consideration, is where are the mindsets of the people you're trying to bring back? And I don't believe people, even though they're saying, yes, I want to get back to work, I want to be with my colleagues, there's I don't know. It's too infectious. How do I know I'm not going to get sick and bring it home to my family? So there's a lot of that going on. But there's also something else. People are in such deep, if they're not like a deer in headlight, then they are really beginning to go internal and look at where are they, why are they where they are, and where do they want to be? And they don't have answers necessarily. I mean, obviously all the online learning is going up because people are trying to find, what can I learn that'll get me through this? What can I learn to do after? But we don't even know what after looks like. So preparing for after is really, it's like going through a maze. So until we decide what we want for our future and then look at it against where the world is, we're not going to know what to pivot to. So the pause time is still going on. It's so critical to really look at what worked, what isn't working. I had a whole series of questions, if you recall, in that newsletter that just came out, Hold the Vision and Don't Let Go. Because if maybe your vision that you had before is completely shredded and shattered and isn't going to revive itself. Or maybe parts of it will. Or maybe for the first time you're realizing how important your close loved ones are. Or maybe you're deciding that this marriage is over and it was really over a long time ago, but it's only showing up now. Or a partnership that you struggle to hang in there together in business and now, so there's so much of this resorting and reevaluating that has to go on. Otherwise, people are just flipping into situations and they're going to be discouraged or upset, or it's the wrong turn, that they didn't take the time to figure it out. So I still think we're in pause time.
So,
very much so.
And to clarify, because I had some people ask me, well, what did you mean by pause? That doesn't mean this passive, go sit in a corner and meditate.
No, it does not mean sit under a banyan tree and ask, bring it to me. No way. But what it means is don't make any fast and furious decisions. This is a time for choice. We have choice in a way we've not had in a very, very long time. Maybe never. After the Great Recession, especially boomers, we had to make new choices. Many of us who were brought to our knees had to make new choices. But it was short-term almost. And we were, whether it was the Great Recession here in the States, yes, but it wasn't the same all over the States. And, when it was 9/11, it really affected New York, but or the New York area, but not the whole country. I mean, we felt it around the country, but it wasn't the same impact. This time, everyone around the world is being affected by this, a pandemic, now the coming depression, and of course, now the chaos in the civil arena. And I believe it's what we've been waiting for as people who are looking to the future, saying something is coming. If you had asked me, I would have said yes. I got asked that on another panel. I got asked that. Well, as a futurist, if you knew there was a pandemic coming, why didn't you tell us? And I realized where that was coming from. That was someone that was so frightened and felt out of control and needed to put it on someone else who might have control. But my answer was that all futurists know that there are triggering events that kick us off into major transitions and confusion and dark times, and then we come out of them. We all know there are triggering events. And we all knew that pandemics are coming. We've had them, they'll come again. This is not the last one, right? But we didn't know it was going to be COVID-19. None of us could have said, oh, that's the one, that's the thing that's going to cause it to go. But so all of us have to realize that in these times moving forward, with all the triggering events that are coming at us, this is going to be a constant mode. So we have to learn what these phases are, how to move both into the middle of the muddle and out of the middle of the muddle.
And now, what is that? And by the way, I'm not quite sure what that means. What does that mean? I mean, and how do I effectuate that on a daily basis?
Right. Okay. Well, one, you have to accept that you're in it. So one, when a triggering event starts, and it could be something at work's happened, and you don't even realize the impact, but something's going on. And suddenly you find yourself facing a decision of, oh my God, I'm going to be furloughed. I'm going to be fired, whatever it may be. You are now, you think you're at the beginning of a transition, but in fact, it already started. It started whenever that event started, right? And you didn't see it coming. And suddenly now you are now in a transition. You're in a crisis mode, right? And that then leads you at some point on the other end, you will be coming up that transition, hopefully reinvented, hopefully some transformation. That whole curve of change can take 3 to 7 years. So that's why you see marriages where things were breaking down, but it took that a while until that marriage was dissolved and you've moved out of it. It's the same thing. So it's not that I'm telling everybody that's listening that, oh wow, you're in for it another 3 to 7 years. It's the cycle. It's the passage that you go through, right?
So what do I do? I mean, and especially if I don't have 3 or 7 years to transition my career or my job or the way I earn an income.
So when I say transition, it's the process of transition. You may end up in another position or another opportunity, but you're still in transition because you're coming out of this change that you've just been through, right? So when you realize that you're interested, and of course, all of us got whammed quickly into this joint, co-shared major transition and crisis, right? So the middle of the muddle is this time we have to accept that we don't know what the you-know-what we're doing. We don't even understand quite how we got here, and we don't understand where it's actually going to. But we have to trust that this time will pass. We will be on the other side of it, but we're in that muddle now, and it's okay. Give us permission to be in that muddle.
We're all in this together, and it's a shared experience. And
Yes.
you're right. I mean, I've been watching the financial channels, listening to all these CEOs and other experts, and nobody's sure.
No one has an answer.
Where's this
No
going?
one
But
has an answer.
that's not exactly. I mean, it's nice to know I'm not alone in this, but it's still scary because it's like, I've lost my job. I don't know if I can keep my job or the way that I've earned an income. I need to pivot. I need to know where to pivot to, and I need to be ready to pivot. So pause isn't good enough for me.
Well, then you're going to cause yourself some more problems by jumping too fast. So the pivot allows you, the pause time allows you to explore, to research, to sit with yourself and say, what's really important to me? What do I want to do for the rest of my years, however long that is, whether you're 30 years old or 70 years? What do you want to do with the rest of your time? And what are my skills and talents? And what didn't I like about where I was before? What do I want that I want in the new me, in the new role, in the new world that I'm creating? Because until you know that, it's sort of like Alice in Wonderland, asking the Cheshire Cat, where do I go? Well, the answer basically was, if you don't know, then you can go wherever you want. So you have to figure this out before you go jumping out of the, hot water for the goldfish. You don't want to be jumping out like that. Now, if income is a real issue and putting food on the table is a real issue, obviously you should not be listening to me right now. You need to go find something that will produce income for you. So I'm not talking to that particular person in that particular position, right? Many of us have more luxury than that, and we can do the exploration, and we have to do the exploration. So that's what pause is about. It doesn't mean sitting there and just meditating. It does mean look for the messengers. Who is it you should be talking to? What are the things that mattered? What are the things that don't matter? Talk to your partner. What are the things that matter to you both? So you can both be on the same page. And how is your vision that you had 2 months ago working for you now? Is that vision still alive, or do you need to put it in the can? Those are all questions that come out in the pause. The pivoting it's kind of, sometimes it's parallel, because I look at this as a hologram rather, where you're seeing things all at once in a three-dimensional image. And so it's the same thing. While you're pausing, you're beginning to pivot. You're just not making the immediate pivot. So because you want to test the waters, you want to see where things are going, right? You have to make that gradual turn. So let's say you always wanted to be an entrepreneur, or you thought you always wanted to be an entrepreneur. Well, you better figure out what the life of an entrepreneur is. and whether that's really suited for you, because it's not suited for everyone. I've written a lot in my writings and speaking, et cetera, and teaching about how I see the future as an entrepreneurial world. And if you're not an entrepreneur, you're an intrapreneur. Otherwise, you're not going to make it. You have to be able to do that. And therefore, you have to know how to pivot. But not everybody is suited for it. So take the time now to discover that while you have the opportunity to discover that. Don't just play games on the video. Take some courses. See what turns you on. Explore it. And the biggest thing is to connect with everyone you have ever known, because everybody's going through this. Don't be afraid to say, hey, what's going on with you? Here's what's going on with me. Right?
Yeah, this is an excellent time to, I mean, do all of those things. The networking. Now's the time to reach out. Not when you need something from them. Reconnect with them now. It makes that next time when you're kind of like, have you heard of anything? What do you have going? The entrepreneur thing, I think, I think you hit a couple of overarching points here. Number one, you said this is really important for people who right now have get a load of this, the luxury of being employed or being somewhat financially stable, but
at least having savings. Yes.
Yes. But now it's nevertheless, and I'll end with asking you a question as a futurist of, is it just going to be a whole new world out there? But to me, it's going to be, and now's the time to be thinking of yourself and thinking of how to earn an income. Think of your skills. Yes, you applied them doing this kind of a job, but you can isolate those skills and do other things.
Exactly.
Intrapreneur attitude of being, what does an entrepreneur do? What's the market? How do I need to pivot and adjust? How do I make the most of this opportunity? This isn't working. I got to get rid of it. So that's so an entrepreneur is somebody who can be employed, but has an entrepreneurial mindset, especially about their life.
Exactly.
So
who is willing to take risks, but not be risky. Especially now, taking risks, but not being risky. Yes.
How the hell do you do
inside
that?
or external.
How do you do that?
Well, you just make sure that you're taking risks that are not so off the edge that you're going to fall off and be dead if you don't make it. That's risky. You don't do that. But you do take risks. You try new things. You put yourself out there. I mean, there's an old phrase, I forget who actually said it, but I've made it mine over the years, is that you need to look at what your skills and talents are and match that up with where it intersects with what the world needs now. So for instance, for me, as you know, I am a futurist, yes, but I'm also what I called a new part of futuring, gero futuring, because I'm a gerontologist and I study adult development and aging across the lifespan. So whether you're 20 or whether you're 80, you're going through stages and phases of the life course, right? So I lost my thought. Oh, right. So here I was, developing a course that I've been working on for a while called Gray is the New Green. And it's one of my books, and it's a chapter in my bigger book, The Ageless Way. And I wanted to bring that out because I felt I needed to grab people's attention why the marketplace, the longevity economy for people, I say 40 plus, but the marketplace says 50 plus, is such an incredible opportunity, especially for those of us who are 40 plus, but even the millennials and Zoomers, because it's such a rich, even in these worst of times, that is not going away. So it's a place for people to get to and go to and dive in and build careers in. But when this happened, the day that really the market went negative, early March, I guess that was, right? Or mid-March, I can't remember exactly now. I had this epiphany that here's this work that's my body of work about the future and the future of work and the future of aging, et cetera. And I realized in that moment, though, that I needed to put that on hold. That was a pivot for me. Not canceled, just on temporary hold, because what the world needed now was people like myself, and there are others, of course, who know a whole lot about reinvention and transition and change and that's where my focus needed to be temporary. It's always been part of my work anyway, but to bring it forward. So suddenly I've republished 4 books on reinvention that are as relevant, maybe more relevant now than when I first wrote them. I started a free group every Monday for people that really wanted to be with me on future proofing so they could pause and pivot and move on. So all these things shifted. Now, that was a pivot I never expected to go back to. Weave in, but not go back to, right? So some of us have to stop and do that. Where are we needed now? Where are we called for? It may not be a permanent change, right? But it's something that needs to be now. Now I'm starting to go back to my other work, of course, because I can hear my sirens calling me, you know, come, we need you, bring this out. But it's a perfect example of that's something we may have to do, each of us, is go back to what worked.
So my favorite quote in this situation that I think aligns with this is Wayne Gretzky, the great hockey player, who, when asked about why were you so successful, he wasn't the fastest, he wasn't the biggest, he didn't have the greatest shot, and he's like, most people go to where the puck is. I always try to go to where the puck is going. Ergo, as a futurist, which, by the way, is not a crystal ball predict, and if a futurist ever predicts anything, run away, as you once told me. But you scientifically and quantifiably and qualifiably look at trends
Where are
on
things
multiple
going?
levels to see what the trends are for the future.
Mm-hmm.
So with that said, pull out your crystal ball. No, just kidding. With that said, though, how would you respond to that now? Because who the hell knows what the trends are? Where do you see this in general going based on where you're sitting right now and what the trends are now?
That's a really, really hard one, because I don't know that any of us really know that. What I do know is that the pandemic will end. The economy will be at some point in a different place than it is now. I don't know if it'll be worse or better yet for a while. And I think the social issues and climate change are the biggest trends we have to watch right now. And that's going to roll back into our personal lives, our professional lives, the country, the world. I mean, so those are the ones that matter to me most. But the other part is there's a silver lining to all of this. People are being called forward to do things they've never thought of doing before, to be involved in a way they've never had before. I mean, if you think, you know, I'm not supporting looters, obviously, and I don't believe that those were the actual protests in any case. But when I think of the crowds that I've seen that are protesting, they are multi-generational, and they're every which way a human being can be, right? All different versions coming together for social justice. That's a major trend. And we need to put our fingers on it and watch it, because that's going to determine so much. When you have Zoomers and millennials and Gen Xers and boomers and
Gen
the
Zers.
matures, coming together like this, they are a force for change, and it's going to force that change. And we have to, I mean, climate change is just going to keep bringing us climate refugees. What are we going to do then? We have to be prepared for that. We have new pandemics. We have to be prepared for that. There's new opportunity in the whole world of serving people 40 plus. It's enormous. That is not going away. Even though we've lost so many elderly people, that's not shifting this major paradigm that we're in. So will there be more remote work? There's a lot of controversy on remote work, but I believe that remote work will be primarily with us. Yes, because people have become more productive as long as they're given the opportunity for mental health and breaks. You know, what I'm seeing is people rolling from Zoom to Zoom to Zoom to Zoom, and they're exhausted by the time they fall into bed. So that has to shift, but I do believe the remote life will be on. And there'll have to be the coming together of all these generations on all of our major issues, not just on social justice, but that's leading the way. It's almost as if the cosmos said, look, you didn't get it when I gave you the 9/11. You didn't get it when Great Recession. You're just not getting it. So COVID wasn't enough. Let me slam you with a few more. And now climate change. We're going to have hurricanes like unbelievable on top of everything else and flooding. So, but those are places where all of us can serve. If we look at what's going on, what's calling us, and look at our skill sets, we'll be able to follow those trends. In the healthcare field, the opportunities in healthcare, and all the new sciences and AI, and it's just all going to change our access to information, our access to innovation. So those are the good things that are coming out of this. The other things that are coming out of it, I think more of us are realizing that we've lived in a bubble and we have to break out of that bubble and come together, you know? So those are some. I mean, there are many more, and almost every sector has trends, but it's almost too soon to latch onto them because everything is changing so quickly. What I have always hoped, and why I got into futuring and gero-futuring, was that I always thought that people, each of us, has to become an everyday futurist. We each have to become an everyday futurist. We each have to step back and take a big picture and see where are things moving and where do we belong? Where is our place in that movement? It shouldn't be left just to people like myself. We can lead the way and we can open the eyes, so to speak. So the eyes see what the eyes have never seen before. But everyone has to take this responsibility because we're in a big shift. And I believe that one of the big trends now is that the future of work, you know, there has been so much ageism, as you know, and I work on this a lot, on ageism in the workforce. And it kind of used to just sneak up on you, but now it's pretty obvious. But what's happened then, all these knowledge workers and highly skilled people have been forced out due to that, right?
First to go, last to be hired has been all the trends and information I've been getting.
Yes, but I believe that will have to switch because, especially, I pick on boomers because they've gone through so many disenchantments and disconnects throughout our lives, especially our adult lives. And now we are so trained. It's sort of like part of our DNA now. We know how to deal with change, both bad change and good change. We know how to get up from our knees on the ground, right? We know how to hold a peaceful, centered space in VUCA times, right? Volatility, et cetera. And so I believe that those high-skilled knowledge workers, mostly boomers, just because of the way it is, will be called back, so to speak, back into the workforce, because we're the ones that know how to lead through discontinuous change. We've survived, right? Now, the Gen X too, because they've been right next to us on the curve of lifespan. But the boomers especially, I believe older people who have the skill sets, you're going to have to retell your story in a way that fits these times, right? But we are the ones that will be needed in leadership roles.
Well, like you've said to me, we have to be our own futurists. And I must say, I've been seeing it, so to play that role, I'm qualified.
Yeah.
But you know, pattern recognition is pretty decent by me. I think the intergenerational thing, I'm seeing a lot of those subtle little bits and pieces, the noise that's going on where it's coming in together, where it's a proper mix of experience and youth, and it's everybody kind of accepting and adapting. I've been, you know, kind of yelling at boomers saying, hey, sometimes it's not ageism, it is you. You know, you got to get with the times here. It's not the millennials who are doing it. This is the way work is now. So quit whining, shut up and adjust. Anyway, so I want to hit one more point with you, and that is just that everything we've been talking about, you know, going back to the primal days of the human species, our brain, so over hundreds of thousands of years,
Yeah.
our brains literally wired themselves to protect us by avoiding and resisting change. So it's in us now, because we've only been in this modern society for a couple of hundred years. That's nothing. So,
Right.
but as I've often heard and experienced myself, that when change like this, like we're going through now, is thrust upon you, that's the easiest. That's kind of that opening, that crack in the door that allows you to make the kinds of changes to yourself and or your life and or the way that you look at things, whatever it is.
I have a phrase for that, Paul. I call it emergence through emergency. And it really captures it all. When we are thrust into emergency, the best of us can come forward. It happens all the time. It's happened throughout history, and it's no different now. This is what will force us to our best. Some will fall by the wayside. Not everybody's cut out for these reinventions. You know, I've long ago talked about reinvention as being not the, I'm just going to change companies, or I'm just going to change a position in the company. To me, that's not really reinvention. That's just moving the furniture around in your house. What's needed now is, and again, you have to be able to support yourself in the meantime, but it's radical reinvention. Radical reinvention means going down to the core of who you are and coming back out at the other end, illuminated and reimagining. So, you know, when going back to that pause time, it's also the time to wonder. Someone brought this to my attention the other day at a conference, the whole idea of wondering. And I thought, what a beautiful way of positioning it for the pause time. It's a time to wonder about. I wonder what I could do with this. I wonder how I could apply myself. I wonder what a new opening might. That wondering and just keeping it going and going and going, which is why you need a partner. You know, whether it's me or you or someone else, we all need somebody to help us shine the light. I think I must probably have mentioned the story of Baba Yaga that I love so very, very much, and I use it a lot in my work and for my own work. And the story of Baba Yaga is much like Hansel and Gretel, you know, finding the witch in the forest. Except this was not an evil witch. This was, Baba Yaga is an old one, is the crone. And she holds the knowledge of the universe. And so when this young princess was shoved out, like Cinderella was shoved out into the woods to find her way and hopefully never come back, she landed at Baba Yaga's house. And unlike Hansel and Gretel, who could get baked and eaten, Baba Yaga said, no way, but you have to do some things. There are 8 you have to conduct, 9 tasks, I think it was actually, that you have to do. And when you finish those tasks, I will let you know whether it is your time to return to the world, to the outer world. And part of those tasks are sifting and sorting and tossing and reevaluating in my own terms, right? And that's what that pause time is. We need to go through that time because you can't reinvent unless you've done that work. Otherwise, you're just going back to the same old patterns in the same old way, right?
Right. Yeah, I just did an interview with Richard Leider, The Power of Purpose, and
Yeah.
2 points that align perfectly with what you say is the first place he said, in times of uncertainty and fear, we as individuals tend to go higher and deeper, which here again in this positive change enables us. And he also talks about, he uses this metaphor a lot because he's gone to Africa almost every year and spent time with this tribe, and he calls it unpack your bags.
Yep.
Get rid of the old crap, because he went on a hike with this tribesman, and here he had all this stuff in a big backpack, and he's going across for several days across the African wilds, and here's this guy with a stick and a couple of little things in a satchel, and he's like, right. I don't need all this stuff. And it really is a great metaphor as it applies applies to life. So, it's like, get rid of the old crap and look at everything anew.
Right. So the Baba Yaga, when you pass the task, when you finish the task, she then hands you, in the myth, She hands you a torch, and the torch is a skeleton head for you, and she illuminates it so that when you leave her, you go back out into the outer world to light the way, to illuminate the way forward for others. And that's the same story of reinvention, especially now, because each of us has to grab that torch, light it for ourselves, and then light it for others.
Yeah, and by the way,
way,
that same metaphor has been done 1,000 times in 1,000 different eras and civilizations. Or it's the cave that you're the most fearful of, is the one you must enter. Star Wars, when Luke goes in the cave and sees that he's Darth. I mean,
exactly.
And what's mythology? Mythology or humans' way of explaining what the hell life is all about.
Exactly. And that's why storytelling is so important,
right,
because that's where all of it is captured. Yeah, exactly. And so this is the time. No, it's right. So what I wanted to say is that's why this is the time for each of us to take the torch from Baba Yaga. But first we have to go through the steps. And nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to go through transition. You're in total upheaval. Nothing is, look where we are as Americans right now. So little is making sense, right? So we have to go back to our origins, back to our beginnings, back to our depths, to come back whole again, to be able to illuminate the way forward. Yes, all of us, every generation.
So here in the end, the bottom line of this interview, excuse me, let me rephrase that. At the end of this interview, moving forward for our long, healthy life and existence.
Yes, absolutely.
Your key piece of advice.
Keep looking forward. Don't keep looking back. The past, I learned this from one of my great mentors, Dr. Deming, Dr. W. Edwards Deming, who was the godfather of the quality movement. And he taught me that the past successes, you cannot predict your future success based on past. It does. You can't predict the future based on the past. You could only look at the future based on what's ahead of you. So you take your skills, you take your smarts with you, and leave all the stuff behind and carve out a new path. The whole world is open now for new paths. Nobody, our highest leaders don't know what they're doing, right?
And
so
they
we
can't.
have to start,
it's not their fault.
No.
I even read a great quote today from somebody in this situation. Details aren't important, but they made the point. They say, so many people in government rush to make an opinion or say the way that it is because there's this feeling that we expect that of them. And this person was like, sometimes we just need to shut up and say, we don't know either. We're figuring this out just like you are.
Right. And doing it together.
Yeah.
That's the key, is doing together. And the other thing is you have to sharpen your vision. That's what this time is for now. All the old visions are out there, shattered, and dreams are shuttered. So sharpen a new vision. Yeah. And before we went into this 3 months, 4 months, whatever it is now, we had 7,000, I think it was, jobs that were unfilled because we didn't have the labor force. We didn't have knowledge workers and high skilled labor people workers to fill those positions. They didn't go away. And now we're not even allowing people coming in through immigration, right, from other countries to give us skill sets that we need. So there's even a greater need. So people who are seeking, just know there's room for us. We just have to find the right matches, but not just because it's a match, but because we know what we need, what we want. Vision is for the world, and then we'll find where to be. We have to trust the process. It is a process, and hold the vision while we're trusting the process.
Yeah, and also I'll end with one more quote, and I love this one. Wayne Dyer, I think, originally said it. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And I think that's the ultimate first step. So Karen, as always, Thank you. Wow, it's going to be interesting to check back in with you in a couple more months and see where we are then. Are we still talking about this stuff or whatever? But this is all really helpful, positive advice. Thank
Good.
you and stay well.
Thank you very much.